Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas, and we have made it to 2021. And I am so thrilled to kick off this year with Deesha Philyaw. Deesha's book, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, was a finalist for the National Book Award and on just about every list of 2020, including The Stacks Best Books of 2020. Deesha talks with us today about her journey to becoming an author, how her stories come to her, and she tells us a lot about the books that have impacted her life. Reminder, the Stacks Book Club for January is The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans, and we will discuss the book on Wednesday, January 27th with Deesha Philyaw. If one of your New Year's resolutions for 2021 was to support artists and creators that you love, here are some ways you can show a little love to the Stacks. One is make sure that you subscribe to this podcast and leave us a rating and a review. This is so easy and it's a free thing and it has a huge outsized impact. So please, please, please subscribe, rate, review. Two is you can follow the Stacks on social media. We are at the Stacks Pod on Instagram and at the Stacks Pod _ on Twitter. If you're planning on buying something from one of our sponsors, please use the Stacks codes. Those will always be in the show notes of every episode. Another super easy thing you can do is tell everyone you know about the Stacks. That means your friends, your family, the members of your in-person book club, booksellers at your local indie, anyone you know who reads, please let them know about the Stacks. And then the last thing is you can join the Stacks Pack, which is the Stacks community on Patreon. These folks contribute monthly and earn perks for their generosity. Perks include things like discounts on merch, our monthly virtual book club where we dive even deeper into the Stacks Book Club picks. Another perk of joining the Stacks Pack is getting a shout out on the show. And this week I'm giving a little love to some of our newest members: Jensen, Ashley Garland, Lisette Medrano, Tessa Palfrey, Lupe, Abby Wolf, Allie Longwell, Caitlin Trillo, Vicky Prebill, Leah Beige, and Hannah Gribble. Thank you all again for being a part of the Stacks Pack. And if you're interested in joining, head to patreon.com/thestacks. Okay, enough. Let's get to this first episode of 2021 with the amazing Deesha Philyaw. All right, everybody, I'm so excited. I'm here today with Deesha Philyaw. Okay, Deesha, welcome.
Thank you, Tracy. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited that you're here. It's a truly just thrilling moment for me because I found out about your book over the summer 2020, since we're recording this in 2020, but it's airing in 2021, from Kiese Layman. And he was like, you have to keep an eye out for this book. And he said it on the podcast. And I'm pretty sure that, 50% of my listeners immediately pre-ordered your book. And
yeah,
and for all of the people who did and who have read your book, I think I can speak for them. We love you. We think you're a genius. And Kiese is amazing for just letting us know we needed to know about you because
oh my gosh,
you're a hero. Like, what? Did you write the greatest book I've ever, it's just so good. You're just so talented that it's like, and it's really exciting because I heard about you on that podcast and now here you are to talk about you with us.
And I heard that podcast and people started a hashtag and it was something like, Kiese told me to read it or something. I'm not going to do it justice. They actually created a hashtag that's still around. And I was just floored. And I love the conversation between you and Kiese, that whole episode. But somebody pinged me and was like, they mentioned you in your book. And so I listened. And so thank you so much for that. But for everything you do for books and authors, I just really appreciate you.
Oh my God. I appreciate books and authors so much. I don't know where I'd be without y'all. So please. You don't know this, but my listeners will know this at the time of this airing, but your book was on our top 10 books of the year from the Stacks, which, it's the stack will be posted soon. So you'll see it. It's like right on top because it's just so slim.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Thank you. What a way to end the year. I'm excited about that.
You've had one hell of a year, I feel.
It has been a wild ride in the Ponderosa. Just a year of, just really high highs. And of course, against the backdrop of, some rough times, but the community aspect of it, like just authors rallying around each other. And I discovered Bookstagrammers. didn't know about Bookstagrammers, and Bookstagrammers are just the best community, and it just keeps on giving. It's not this sort of one-time thing where somebody posts your book or you talk to them, but we're just in constant conversation with each other and really having fun. And so I just appreciate that community
Yeah.
that really made a difference.
Me too. I love them. I mean, I'm part of Bookstagram and also not in some ways. And I like to think that I'm more part of it than I'm not, but just such a great, embrace of reading. And I
Hmm.
find that people are so smart and thoughtful and
Yes.
generous.
Yes.
And even, when someone doesn't like something, I'm often really like excited by that too. Like it
Hmm.
helps me to frame my own understanding of work and
Yeah.
what did I miss and what, why was that offensive that I didn't see it or whatever. But I
Right.
want to
Right. We're
backtrack.
learning from each other.
Exactly. I want to backtrack a little bit because we sort of dove in, but I normally like to give people a little bit of sense of who I'm talking to. So
Okay.
for people who aren't on Bookstagram or didn't listen to the episode with Kiese or haven't read your book yet, your debut short story collection came out in 2020 and it's called The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. But even before that, you're a whole person. So why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself, sort of maybe where you're from, where you live now, if that's different, and
Hmm.
maybe like kind of how you came into writing.
Sure. So, excuse me, I was born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida. And then I left for college. But I've been in Pittsburgh since 1997. And so now I've lived in Pittsburgh longer than I lived in my hometown.
Hmm.
So I have mixed feelings about that. I have a lot of nostalgia for the South that shows up all through The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. Almost all the stories except one are set in the South. Um, I have two children, and I have daughters, and my oldest is 22, my youngest is 17. And I came to writing because after a terrible stint as a management consultant and then a short stint as an elementary school teacher for a couple of years. And then when we moved to Pittsburgh we had been in New York and Connecticut for a while, came to Pittsburgh and decided to start a family. And I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And so I had this toddler who you can relate to, probably. Well, I don't know. Yours are little, you said they slept. You told me they slept.
Yeah.
My oldest never napped.
Oh.
And so right, like exactly, never napped. And she was like really intense. And so I would carve out this little bit of time for myself, like 30 minutes,
Mm.
and I would write. And sometimes she'd be like screaming on the other side of the door and I'd be crying too, but I'd be writing. And so that's how I got started. And I was, I talk about the fact that I didn't think of myself as writing about church ladies per se, but I was writing about dissatisfied women 20 years
Mm.
ago, because I was a dissatisfied woman,
Mm.
but I didn't feel comfortable writing about myself and
Hmm.
as nonfiction. And so I just gave my dissatisfaction to these characters. But even then they were church women because of that nostalgia that I mentioned. I grew up in the church, and those were the women that I remembered and I was truly fascinated by. So when I started writing, they bubbled up to the surface.
I love that. So do you feel like there are particular women, and let me just say this for everybody, we won't spoil anything. We won't spoil any of the stories today. Don't worry. But do you feel like you see yourself still in any of the characters, or any of the characters from the collection feel more like you than others, or that you still relate to? Because I can speak for myself. I am satisfied in many ways, but of course, I'm always a little
Hmm.
unsatisfied, right? Like that keeps you
Yeah.
going.
Yes. Yes. Um, there are pieces of me throughout the collection.
Hmm.
There's no one character like that's me or that's
Mm.
my mom or that's our situation or anything like that. Um, but definitely, the you know I think about Jael, who is a teenage character. Like, she's braver than I am. And so one of the things that and I hesitate to call it bravery because, she stands up to predators,
Right,
basically.
right,
And that doesn't mean that people who don't stand up to them aren't brave,
right.
you know.
It's just a
Um,
different type of person.
Yeah. And so, and so certainly some of the experiences that she has around being harassed on the street, for example, I don't know a Black woman who as a child didn't endure something like that. So, I harken back to those things. There's a lot of longing throughout the book, of women's longing. And, I have been married and divorced twice. So I have a lot of longing. There's grief in the book. I have a lot of grief. Two divorces, and I lost both my parents and my grandmother. So there's a lot of grief that, is woven through that. So I didn't intentionally, like I did 20 years ago, say, okay, this is how I'm feeling, so I'm going to put it here. So much time has passed since I started, in my life, there's a lot of things that I've healed from and learned from. And so it showed up more like organic or subconsciously. Like I didn't realize that there would be so much mother-daughter stuff in this book until I finished it.
Right.
And it was like, oh, wait a minute. I guess I had stuff I had to work out, like
Right.
there was some unfinished business with my mother. My mother passed away in 2005. And so a lot of that stuff sort of popped up in really unexpected for me.
I love the collection so much. And so I'm sitting here trying to be like, how can I talk about it without talking about it? Because I don't want to ruin it for anybody else. And I
Okay.
I'm also more than like listeners at home. Read this collection. It's incredible. You all know I don't really like fiction. So for me to be talking about fiction like this is just like point blank. It's got to be at least baseline, like very, very good, because normally I hate all fiction. But
tough crowd.
Yeah. No, I mean, my listeners know. They're like, oh, you said you enjoyed a chapter in this book. So I picked it up because I thought maybe since I like fiction, I'd actually like it, but so I don't want to give anything away in the books. I want people to read it and experience it. But there are so many incredible characters. Each story has like really, people that stay with you and that you think about. I've been calling her Jael, but I guess I was saying that wrong. But
Jael,
she's my favorite. That's my favorite story. I just thought that story was so incredible.
Okay.
I know everybody loved Peach Cobbler, which of course, you can't not like think about Peach Cobbler. I mean, the scientist one, How to Marry a Scientist or whatever that was.
Oh, How to Make Love to a Physicist.
Yes. There I am
fun.
paraphrasing. Like there are just so many great stories. The one about the crabs and the women, like it's just so good. So I'm wondering, how do these people come to you? How are you making so many vivid, strong characters? And how do you know when you're done with the story?
Yeah.
Especially because you said it's kind of been a 20-year project in some regards.
Yeah. So, when I started 20 years ago, excuse me, I started 3 different novels. I was just going to jump right into this writing thing and try and write a novel. And 2 kind of died pretty quickly. And then there was a 3rd novel that has persisted. And this next year, I hope, is the year that I finish it.
Me too.
So it's always been the novel. And then I had all these detours. I started writing parenting column. I was doing a lot more personal essay. Then there was the whole co-parenting 101 era with my ex-husband and, building that brand and writing that book. And while I appreciated all of it, it all felt like a detour away from fiction. And so I worked on the novel, the one that sort of had legs, starting in 2007. The agent that I have for the co-parenting book, she knew there was a novel and she's like, when you're ready, I'm ready for it. And I just stalled. I got like 2/3 of the way done and I stalled. And then I started writing these short stories, and I would read them at readings, and my agent would be there. And so after one of these readings, she said, I'm really liking these church lady stories. So she was the first to really see that through line. And I hadn't been thinking about them that way. And so she was suggesting that I write a collection while this novel was marinating for 13 years. And so I thought, it feels more doable to do a series of stories. And she said, if I could get 3 stories published, we could shop the manuscript on the strength of 3 stories. That felt possible. That felt less overwhelming. And I was like, I can do that. I can do that. So the stories themselves come from a lot of different places. But one common thread are the church women that I, grew up with. And so especially the older women characters like Giles' granny, like
Right.
those voices, that's I remember hearing my grandmother and her friends. And now my mother and my grandmother weren't church ladies. They sent me to church, which is a whole other thing, but I was always in church, but they were sending me. They didn't go. So I had questions about that. So I had a lot of curiosity around like women who were in the church versus women who were outside of the church. And I think it just made such a huge impression on me that when I started imagining and thinking about women's lives, it was those women, especially around sex and sexuality. Because as a kid, like I'm watching them, like, what is this whole womanhood thing about,
Right.
And like, are they as horny as I am? Do they have sex? Like, if they're not married, do they masturbate? Like,
Right, right,
I
right.
was,
Of
all in
course.
their business in my head. I
Right.
would never say anything, but I was fascinated by them. And so it comes out. It came out later through these different stories. But each of the different stories kind of has a different origin. But like with Jael, since we were talking about that one, I read that story, the biblical account of the real Jael, not in the Bible, but I read it about it somewhere else. So then I went to the Bible and I looked it up, and it was like murder,
Mm,
and so personal, driving a nail through somebody's head and nailing them to the floor. Like that's personal as hell.
right.
And so I just wrote that down, and like I'll save things and it'll be like a year or 5 years later or 5 days later, and then I'll come back to it. And so when I was building the collection, I remember thinking, okay, what if there was a 14-year-old Black girl and this was her name? Like,
Right.
who would name a kid that?
Right.
And what if like she sort of lived up to that? So she killed somebody. I had no idea why she would kill somebody, or who she was, or who was the person that named her that, and did they know the story behind it. So I had to then fill in all of those
Right.
gaps. So that's how Jael came about. And then How to Make Love to a Physicist, I had a crush on a physicist,
Simple.
and I was very giddy and so excited. And the first line, how do you make love to a physicist? It happens on Pi Day. I
Right.
thought that was just so clever. So I wrote it down. And then it was, 6 months, a year later, when I needed to finish the collection, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do something with this.
Hmm.
So the similar process with Giles, like, okay, how do they get to the making love on Pi Day? Where do I got to start? I know
Right.
where I want to end up. How do we get there? And I've got to complicate things for them, or else
Right.
I don't like sentimental stuff. Um,
Me neither.
to throw some obstacles in their way. And so, who are these people? Who's the physicist? Who's this? Who's going to make love to him? And how do I make things difficult for them? And then they finally get to make love. So it was that sort of the framework for those. So every story, there's some bit of, there was a germ or an idea or something that drove it. Snowfall is another interesting one, I think.
Mm,
Um, because I knew I was working on a collection. It hadn't sold yet, but I had to write something because I had been invited to be part of someone's book launch. You know how now people do, it's
yeah.
like the opening acts and then the
Yeah.
headliner. So my friend Abir Hoke, whose book Olive Witch came out some years ago, she's Bangladeshi American, grew up in Pittsburgh after being born and spending the first 13 years of her life in Nigeria. But anyway, she was coming home to do her book launch, and she invited me and Tuhin Das, who's a Bangladeshi writer in exile. Like he had to flee and come to Pittsburgh to take refuge here. And I'm like, okay, so I don't write. I write about Black women and sex. Like, what do I have to read that's anything like, the
Right.
theme or whatever here? And I thought, but you know what? Both of them write about displacement. So what Black church lady story or church lady adjacent, they're not
Right.
church ladies, can I write where it's this theme of displacement? And it was the dead of winter, and it was freezing, and I hate the cold, I hate the snow, I hate to shovel, I hate all of that. And that's when that line, Black women aren't meant to shovel snow.
Mm,
And then it was like, okay, who are these Black women? Um, and they're out shoveling. And then it came to me like, oh, they're not like friends or roommates. Like they're a couple.
right.
Okay. All right. So they're here. and they came from somewhere warm, and then, I just kind of build the
Right.
story from there.
I love that. I love that it's like these little seeds that you then kind of like problem solve your way into a
Yes.
story.
It's like, have you ever talked to Carmen Maria Machado?
I've
Well,
never,
okay, because right, you don't like fiction.
but I
Okay, so
want
I
to. I
interviewed.
mean, I would
Oh
like
gosh,
to. I've heard
she's
only
great.
wonderful things. So if you're listening, yes, please come on the
Yes,
podcast.
I interviewed her years ago, and she talked about writing fiction and writing stories as solving a math problem. And
Mm.
like, I felt so seen, because I'm like, that's exactly it. Like, what if you take this and solve for this? Or, that's
Right.
how it works. And it's experimentation, and there's a level of play and fun
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah. And I think when it's done well,
Hmm.
you, as a reader, can
Hmm.
feel that. Like, I think that that's
Yeah.
one of the things that I really like about your collection is that I
Hmm.
feel like I got a sense of play from you. Even
Oh,
though the stories,
thank you.
some of them were pretty heavy and pretty dark, some of them
Yeah.
are funny and it's like, okay. But there's always
Yeah.
sort of this sense of humor and this sense of, even in the heaviest parts, the sense of lightness. And that's something that
Yeah.
Kiese and I talked a little bit about when he was on the podcast is that, and I think also I talked about it with Britt Bennett, is that something that
Hmm.
I think that is super Black is finding the joy and the humor in the dark
Yes.
stuff. And so I think that like if you
Yes.
can nail that in the writing, that's what makes it feel realistic, right? Like it doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you're grieving and if your character is grieving because like even
Mhm.
I remember so strongly at my father's funeral, like we had Jack in the Box tacos. My mom's friend picked up like so
Gotta
many of
eat.
them. And she walked
You
in with this
gotta eat.
huge bag of tacos
Mhm.
from Jack in the Box. And like, I mean, I'm like crying right now laughing because it's one of the funniest things I feel like that ever
Yeah.
happened. And yet,
Mhm.
like, I think about
Yeah.
that as like one of the strongest memories from the day of my
Yes.
father's funeral, And so like there's
Yeah.
something in that. I want to ask you about sort of the success of your book.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I say that I guess like outside success, not necessarily
Mhm.
how you feel about the success of your work,
Yeah.
which I think is
Yeah.
interesting in a different conversation. But your book was a
Mhm.
finalist for the National Book Award, which is, a
Mhm.
huge freaking deal. You've been on so many lists. You've been included in so many conversations about best books of 2020. So I'm curious when you set out, like when you knew the book was going to
Mhm.
get published, when you knew it was happening, what were your hopes for your book? What were you like, okay, this is the dream? And I'm going to assume that it probably wasn't like, I'm going to be a finalist for the National Book Award because I think that's like thinking you're going to win an Oscar. It's like, sure, that's
Yeah.
great. But like, you don't, like, so did you have goals around what you thought you wanted to happen to the book?
My goals were minimal
Okay.
because especially because it had taken me so long with the novel and I hadn't finished the novel. So finishing was a goal.
Right.
And
Right.
then getting it published was a goal. And I'm a very practical person. And
Mm.
so I knew, it's a small book. It's short stories, which are a hard sell. My agent told me right up front, hard sell. It's on a university press.
Right.
And so, I did not expect it to be a book that would have a high profile.
Right.
Um, I do think that my publisher might have had a sense. I mean, obviously, they chose to publish the book. I mean, and everybody was surprised. They were definitely surprised, but I feel like they really thought that it was going to have legs to the point like they made it like the lead book in their fall 2020 catalog. Like
Mm.
that's a decision they made last year,
Right.
just on from the manuscript. So I was excited about that. Hadn't predicted that at all. But what I wanted the book to do, or to what I would decide was success, is if Black women felt seen and
Mm.
heard in the book, and that it would start conversations around the church and um sort of the reach of the church, and how we so many of us, whether you were raised in the church or not, are still trying to get free of some of that stuff because
Right.
the reach is far beyond the church itself and church people. um and so I wanted to have those conversations. It was not my intention ever to bash the church or bash church people. And so I felt like it was really a conversation or
Yeah.
the stories could spark conversation. So yeah, those were my goals.
And I mean, do you feel like you achieved those goals?
I did. Oh my gosh. So lots of conversations with church folks. I have had a number of book club conversations, but the one I had last week was with Black women church pastors.
Mm.
That was great.
Yeah.
Now I had not predicted that, that specific group, but that was awesome.
Oh, I love
Um,
that.
and hearing that mothers and daughters are reading the book
Mm.
together and having conversations that they hadn't had before. I've had conversations with two of my friends who are pastors, and one of them in particular said, can you create a discussion guide to help pastors have a way to talk about this church, or talk about this book, to teach this book in church? So I actually have two discussion guides. One of them has some ratchet playlists in it. And so then the other one is identical minus the ratchet playlist plus additional questions for church groups.
Wow.
Because I really wanted to foster those conversations.
That's so interesting. I do not have any relationship to the church. My mother's
Hmm.
Jewish, so we were raised sort
Hmm.
of like Jewish, but also sort of just like we celebrate all the holidays, type Christian and
Hmm.
Jewish holidays. But I did go to Catholic school. So that's like my
Hmm.
relationship to the church. But your book still really spoke to me. So for anyone who's
Hmm.
listening, who's like, I'm not a church person at all, like me
Yeah,
neither. I've like never been to church except for in my high
yeah,
school gym. So, it's accessible even if that's not your entry point. And if it is your entry point, you'll
right.
probably freaking love it. Um,
Yeah.
what what was it, as you mentioned, like one of the goals was to have Black women read it and have
Hmm.
meaningful conversations and all of that. What is it
Hmm.
like for you, for your book to find success with audiences outside of your intended
Hmm.
audience? Like, is it weird to hear, like white men talk about it, or like,
Right.
like, what is that like?
It was one of those things where I knew that my book could be accessible to people who weren't Black women. I didn't know, I knew it could, I didn't know it would be. I didn't know
Mm,
how other people would respond. I knew because Toni Morrison told us that, August
right,
Wilson told us that you can write about Black life, you can write Black specific stories and be telling universal stories at the same time.
right.
So I knew it was possible. But it was like a pleasant surprise to see this range of people finding those entry points around broader themes like freedom.
Mm,
Um, and even if you aren't connected to the church or the Black church, we do know about binaries and how restrictive they are. The Madonna whore, good, bad.
right.
Um, and all of us have had to unlearn certain binaries for ourselves or either how we engage other people. So I think there were a number of entry points. And then
Mm,
I think there are people who, whether sparked by, the uprisings this spring and summer, or just a general part of their anti-racism journey, have made it a point to just learn about people who have experiences other than their own experiences, to
right.
find out different experiences. But in a situation where Black women are centered in their own narratives. Like, this is not you read the help to learn about Black women,
Right.
right? Like, no,
Don't do
this
that.
is Black women centered, and the only gaze is our gaze.
Right.
And that's how you find out about people, through their own voices and where they're not marginalized in their own worlds. That, the world is in their orbit and not the other way around.
Yeah. We're going to pause talking about your book for now.
Okay.
The last week of January, we're going to be discussing Danielle Evans' book,
Hmm.
The Office of Historical
Yes.
Corrections. So we will talk more about short story writing. We will talk more
Hmm.
about Black women writing. But I'm going to move off that a little bit and kind of transition us.
Okay.
But before I do want to ask you about, you mentioned this earlier, but you wrote a book with your ex-husband called
Hmm.
Co-Parenting 101, Helping Your Kids Thrive in Two Households After Divorce. And
Hmm.
I think that, like, I didn't know that about you until I was like researching for this interview. And I think that that's like sort of cool and great. And like, it speaks to the idea that if you're a writer, you write, and you can write about
Hmm.
anything. You don't have to write short stories just because you wrote a book of short stories.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to write about parenting just because you wrote a book about parenting. But what
Yeah.
I want to know, and I'm sure you get this all the time. So I'm going to try to put a little twist on it. What is the
Okay.
best piece of advice you can give to people who are co-parenting or in a divorce that is not the normal or most typical advice? Like, it's like the thing that you're like, I think this is really important and people miss this. And then the flip side is, what is the piece of advice that you often hear that you think is not productive?
Okay. So for the first one, I think the way that my ex and I talked about it was fresh. I don't know how, I mean, the sentiment isn't typical,
Okay.
but we use the analogy of like a zombie. Like
Okay.
your marriage is like a zombie. And if you keep if you stay tied up in knots around the stuff that went wrong in the marriage and you keep focusing on this person as the person who let you down or the person who cheated on you or the person who lied to you,
Mm,
it's like you just think of it, the rotting corpse of a zombie. Like that's what you're carrying around. That's what your children are
right.
exposed to. That's what you have to deal with. And so it's literally like putting that to death.
Hmm.
Like literally, like you have to let that die. It doesn't mean that how you were hurt doesn't matter. You
Right.
know, that's what therapy's for.
Right.
But literally, like the more you hold on to it without dealing with it, it stinks. Literally, it stinks. It's rotting. It's scary, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when people, So if I think it helps for people to think about bringing that into the co-parenting situation, you're literally bringing like rotting flesh into it.
Mm,
So, just helping people to kind of understand what it could be, the experience could be for their children when
yeah.
things remain toxic and the dead stuff, is still there. Um, the thing that people I think get wrong um, is, and it was a common misconception about us and our book, was that we were saying, or that we ever say, that co-parents have to be friends.
Hmm.
Like, you don't have to be friends
Right.
with your co-parent to do right by your kids. And in fact, sometimes when people consider themselves friends after divorce, the thing they have to worry about are boundaries,
Yeah.
right? Because like you've got new relationships, and also that can be confusing for your kids, and just there still need to be some boundaries. Doesn't mean you can't be friends, it just means you need boundaries. And we in our book aren't advising that the goal is to be friends with your ex. The goal is to have a healthy co-parenting relationship so that your child has the best experience possible living between two households.
Right.
Friendship may or may not be in the cards, and that's perfectly fine. Some co-parents are like business partners
Right.
and their kids are thriving, and that's the point.
What I love about you and I find so fascinating and exciting and interesting is that you are a fantastic short story writer who has lived these other lives and had these other experiences, whether it be, writing this book about co-parenting or having gone through divorce, or you had other careers prior to this. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that is so refreshing and exciting to hear as a reader, because I know that it informs the work that you do. And I know
Yeah.
that it allows you to have so much more going on. And I also think for people who are aspiring writers, which I am
Mm-hmm.
not, but for those of you who are, it's sort of encouraging to know that you could work on a short story collection sort of for 20 years and all of a
Yeah.
sudden be a National Book Award finalist. Like it's like the same thing as like Toni Morrison publishing The Bluest Eye at like
39.
39. It's like, this
Right.
is great. This is like, you are living proof of like, just live your life and the
Yes.
art can come. I just love
Mm-hmm.
that.
And
Okay.
keep working at it. Keep
Yeah.
working and focusing on getting better. And it's hard because I did the same thing. We want to get published because that validates us.
Right.
But focusing on more, as much energy on getting better
Mm,
at writing than, getting published.
right.
That will come.
Right. It's like the balance between the public validation and then the private
Yes.
validation. And that's hard. And it's not
Yeah.
always in balance.
No, no. And embracing critique, embracing revision. Basically, we just all need to like do what Toni Morrison did. Like she
Right.
embraced revision. She embraced critique. She wrote The Bluest Eye out completely, decided it was wrong. I don't even know what that could possibly mean. And then rewrote the whole book.
Wow. I didn't know
And it
that
was
story.
not unusual for her to do 10, 11, 12 revisions of things. So who are we if,
Right.
if
If
the
she can do it.
master is
Right.
doing
Right.
is revising,
We're just
you
some
know.
basic ass bitches who do one
Right?
draft.
Right. Like, no, 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 no.
Oh
No,
my
no,
God.
no.
Okay, we're going to take a quick little break and then we'll be right back. Valentine's Day is upon us, and I've got love on the brain. Love for books, duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind the scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to tracythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the Stacks. Okay, so I did not prep you for this part. This is the part that I always spring on my guests. Someone has written into us. They're asking for book recommendations, and we're going to give it to them. So I'm going to read you their email, and then you think about what might fit. And this one is actually 2 parts, and I thought about editing it down to 1 part, but then I sort of liked the 2-partness to it. So we'll see how it goes. This is from Sarah Hauer, and Sarah says, do you have any book recommendations for getting out of a reading slump? Recently, I have just felt so distracted and unfocused anytime I sit down to read, especially as I'm starting to get anxious about going back to school. I'm a high school science teacher with all the COVID stuff going on. I typically go for quick thrillers or romance novels when I'm in a slump, but I'm open to anything. And then Sarah says, also, would you have any recommendations for books on social justice or anti-racism in education? I've added a ton of books to my TBR from your anti-racist reading list, but I'd also like to find some books that speak to the experiences of students of color or other underrepresented students. I would love to learn more actionable steps and strategies for supporting my students of color and for teaching my often entitled white students how to care about people and issues other than themselves. So that's that. I took that to mean 2 kinds of books for Sarah and then books sort of for the education side. But I'm going to do for my book, I'll go first so that you have a time to think. So we'll do part 1 and then we'll do part 2. So for part 1, I'm just going to suggest a short story collection or short story collections for coming out of a reading slump, because you can just focus on like, okay, I'm just going to read these like 10 pages or 20 pages. And then you kind of get your groove. So obviously, what kind of person would I be if I didn't recommend The Secret Lives of Church Ladies and The Office of Historical Corrections? Because that's the book we're going to discuss. And then also kind of to fill that out for my trifecta of amazing Black women short story writers, The Heads of Colored People by Nafisa Thompson Spire. Like, so good. So that would be my sort of how to get out of a reading slump. Any of the stories from any of those collections will get you tingling in all sorts of ways. Your turn.
So you took mine, but that's okay. It was Nafisa's, because same thing, thinking about short stories. I'll also mention, and I don't know that it's out yet, but pre-order if it's not. It's called Milk, Blood, Heat by Daniel Moniz.
I've seen this.
And it's on it's on Roxane Gay's new book club that she's
Oh,
going to do
yes.
in the new year. So that's one of the titles there. And Dantiel is my homegirl. She's from Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
So I would recommend her book. And then also How to Sit by Tyrese Coleman.
Okay.
And she does this hybrid, it's memoir in essays, or not essays, memoir in nonfiction and fiction. And
Okay.
you don't always know
Which
what's
is
what.
which? Ooh.
Yeah, but it's all, memoir. A memoir in this, it's a hybrid, I guess.
I love that.
So I think that would be really interesting. And
That's great.
then one other one that's not short stories, but that you won't be able to put down when you start is Bossy Ikpe's I'm Telling the Truth, But I'm Lying.
Mm.
And that's memoir that will just blow you away. And you'll be drawn in immediately. And so, pull you right out of that slump.
I love that.
And then I don't have specific books for education, for educators, but
Okay.
I have some books that I think that if Sarah or any educator can become more anti-racist,
Hmm.
I think they will be better teachers in
Yes.
general. And
Yes.
they,
Yes.
they have to learn and unpack their own racism, and then develop that lens through which they see the materials they teach, the lens through which they see their students, and better understanding their students. So I have several recommendations that would sort of just in general awareness. I think
Mm.
so much of the reason that white supremacy just continues to flourish is because white people don't understand what it is,
Right. Right.
and don't know the history, and don't
Right.
know, how it's at play. So a really good one is White Tears, Brown Skin by
Mm.
Ruby Hamad. And she wrote a Guardian article a few years back about white women weaponizing their tears. And then she developed this book that it looks at centuries and across centuries, across continents, of how white supremacy and misogyny, have been co-created, and what that means for women of color in different countries. And sometimes when people say women of color, it gets diluted.
Right.
She doesn't do that. Like, she really looks at different groups of women in different
Love that.
eras and in different countries. um Zerlina Maxwell, The End of White Politics.
Mm.
um, basically in that one, she's like, we cannot elect another 70-year-old white man. And what did
And
we
here
do?
we
Okay,
are.
exactly. So read her book. And then Do Better. It has a subtitle, but it has something to do with spiritual activism.
Okay.
So I would say, if you had to pick just one of these books, Sarah, it would be Do Better. And it's this a woman who's a spiritual activist. She teaches anti-racism workshops, but then she took all of her stuff and put it in a book. And they're like meditations, they're writing
Mm.
exercises, there's breathing exercises, and it's specifically for white women. Any white person can benefit, and people, and Black people, people of color as well, because her premise is that white supremacy is affecting all of us.
Right.
And so she gives, but she doesn't give like blanket solutions. Like, depending on who you are, there are different solutions and different tools. Really no nonsense. It's also part memoir, and her
Mm.
story is fascinating. And I believe she's Canadian. She's Black Canadian.
I love this.
Um, Mediocre,
Oh, so
of
good.
course.
Oh, so good. Oh,
I mean, and then this seems like it would be kind of like a niche thing, but it's a great book. It's called Do Right by Me,
okay.
and it's for white people raising Black children.
Mm.
But I think it's great for anybody who cares about Black children. And
Yeah.
it's written by a Black woman, and one of her best friends is a white woman who adopted a Black child.
Oh.
And so, I mean, it's like really personal, but it's also scholarly. It's a really,
Oh my
really
gosh.
good book.
I need to read that.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
I went in a slightly different direction than you. I kind of took the
Okay.
prompt and went like slightly different. But Sarah, the first book is actually, I think, for educators or at least for parents. It's called This Book is Anti-Racist by Tiffany Jewell. I've not read it, but I know that she does anti-racist work in schools and with teachers. I also feel like if you're looking for books more in that world, you should follow Tiffany on social media. She's great. And then what I took is, you mentioned earlier that you were a high school science teacher. So instead of giving you anti-racist books that were explicitly like, this is how you dismantle racism, my challenge to you would be, maybe you should start reading and teaching science related books that come from Black folks or folks from marginalized communities. So the three that I have, just to help you switch your perspective, to switch the ways that we think about science, because that's something that we think of as being such a white man space. And there are so many women of color who are in the science world who have been doing great things. Like, obviously, we all saw, what's the movie where they send them to outer space and Black women. Hidden Figures, like there are hidden figures everywhere. But the ones I would suggest is Harriet A. Washington. She writes about medicine. Her book, Medical Apartheid, is an incredible book all about the different ways anti-Black racism played into medicine, from the C-section to Tuskegee to some crazy shit that was going on in Florida in the 90s. Like, it's an incredible book. There's also Chanda Prescott Weinstein, whose new book is coming out. She is like an astrophysicist or some shit, but she's also Black and Jewish, and she's great on Twitter, and she's hell of smart, and she's a PhD, and she's writing about the same stuff that someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson might be writing about, but she doesn't get the same kind of play. So even though he's Black, she's a woman, shifting that. There's a book called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and that's a Native American perspective on sort of science, and so that's another person you could check out. And then the last one I would throw out is All We Save. It's a collection edited by Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson and Catherine K. Wilkinson, and it approaches science and the environment through a feminist lens. Ayanna's Black, I believe Catherine is white, but she's definitely white presenting, and they're collecting essays and text about environmental justice, and recognizing that so much of the environmental justice work that we're seeing is coming from young women, even though that's not the way that we think about it. So that collection has to do with that. So as opposed to giving you, how to be an anti-racist, I'm challenging you more to include those voices in the reading that you're doing around the work that you do. So that is my advice. If you read any of those recommendations, and we gave you so many, so you better, let me know how it goes. Let us know how it goes. Tag us, mention us, let us know how it all went. Okay, Deesha, now this is the part where we do the stacks questions, where I ask you all about all the book superlatives of your life. And you already warned me you are not good at superlatives, but we'll see. I'll be the judge of that. So we always start here. 2 books you love and 1 book you hate.
2 books I love. Heavy by KSA, of course.
So good.
Is one. I'm going to shout out Untrue by my friend Wednesday Martin, Dr. Wednesday Martin, and she's writing about female sexuality and promiscuity and infidelity, and it's like a juicy scientific book, which is awesome.
I love that. Yeah, I love juicy science.
Untrue. So there's a YA book that I won't name.
Okay.
But my complaint about the book is sort of just a white writer kind of mishandling race, which is, problem number 1. But then looking at the critical praise for this book, I think that all of our kids deserve better. Right. And so if there's going to be a book that purports to handle race and class and sexuality as this book, was supposed to do, then it really needs to do a good job. And it needs to be a good story. It needs to be well written, but it also can't be clumsy around race. And so in this particular story, one of the things that was really glaring is that it was supposed to be about race, and the main character was going to have to leave her predominantly white school and go to a predominantly Black school because her father lost his job. Well, the whole book takes place the summer before. So she never actually goes to the Black school. So then you just have these like token Black characters.
Right.
and we get like a mention of the Black boy, and every scene he was in, the mention of his white teeth and his dark skin. Like, come on,
Bye.
we're
Goodbye.
so beyond that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, and so my beef is that got published, and yet, there are Black writers writing about Black children who get
Right.
rejected,
Right.
and so I will always hate that book for taking the place of a book that would have been something better for all of our kids, that
Right.
really could have tackled race in a way that was a resonant story, but also a true story. Even
Yeah.
as fiction, it needs to be true in the sense of like the Black characters being fully realized and being three-dimensional and not caricatures.
Right. Right.
So,
It's just so frustrating because like you said, there's
yeah.
so many writers who can do it better and they don't
Mhm.
get the
Mhm.
opportunity. Did you read that thing in the New York Times, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, about
Mhm.
like how white publishing was? And there was a part where it was like, well, we already
Yeah.
have Jason Reynolds, so why do we need that? It's like, well, I agree. I love Jason Reynolds. Like, please, more Jason Reynolds all the time.
But we are not interchangeable. We are not interchangeable, and the fact that they even, fix their
Right.
mouths to say that is just enraging. It
It's
is
just
absolutely enraging.
right. And it's like, at least, again, I can't speak for everybody, but as a Black woman in America, like
Mhm.
I have been in that situation where I feel like I didn't get something because someone else did.
Yeah.
And I know
Mhm.
that there's room for all of us at the table, but
Yeah.
it built into me this sense of like, well, I have to do everything I can to get like, and it builds that crabs in a barrel mentality. And it isn't until
Mhm.
recently that I've even really started to unpack like the ways that I behave because of that stuff, which sort of is to your point
Mhm.
about like white supremacy is
Mhm.
in all of us,
Yes.
even if we're not necessarily perpetuating it on purpose or we're not
Right.
white supremacists, we're still
We've been
dealing with that
conditioned
stuff.
by it.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're
exactly.
conditioned by it. And then you get someone like a Kiese who is disrupting that by
Right.
saying, I'm going to be a gateway. I'm going to bring as many people with me
Right.
as possible. He doesn't see other writers as competition,
Right. Right.
and so we have to do more of that.
Right. Right. I had a great conversation with the women who wrote Big Friendship, Aminatou Sow and Anne Friedman. And it's a book about being friends.
Hmm.
So they have this thing that they call shine theory, which is like, it's not for everybody, right? Like it's not like just because you're a woman of color, just because you're Black, or just
Right.
because you're the same as me,
Hmm.
you have to be successful. But it's about building your community and helping to like, I don't shine until you shine, and you don't shine
Yeah.
until I shine, and making space and talking about salary and like all of that
Hmm.
stuff. And what they said that I found really interesting is that they talked about how that's a practice. It's not
Hmm.
something that they do naturally, or it's not necessarily the natural impulse
Right.
because of the ways we've been conditioned, but that there's an active, like, I'm going to repurpose this. And like,
Hmm.
like for me, it's like, I'm super competitive and I'm just competitive about everything. I really am. I know it's terrible. It's like some disgusting American shit that I have, and I'm just super competitive, but I have to make a concerted effort to stop and be like, am I being competitive for a good reason? Or am I being petty? Am I being mean? Am I being a
Hmm.
gatekeeper? Am I stopping someone
Hmm.
else? And do I need to be? Am I
Right.
stopping them because I'm jealous, or am I stopping them because I think they're harmful, or like because I
Hmm.
think that
Hmm.
they're going to get in the way in an actual disruptive bad way.
Right.
But that's sort of like the work that I have to do as someone who like loves Black women and loves Black
Hmm.
men and loves queer, like I'm all for everyone being successful, but then in the moment it's like, oh shit, what are you doing? What have you been taught?
Yeah.
And I feel like what you're saying about that book is like, it sort of perpetuates all of that just in the
Hmm.
publishing of it, right? Like
Yeah.
just in it existing, it meant that someone else didn't get an opportunity, and it meant that someone else had to like put that armor on.
Right. And in the scrutiny where no one in the chain said is the intentionality that you're describing, like how
Right.
you interrogate yourself. Like publishing has to interrogate itself and saying, we know that we have this problem. We know that
Right.
historically we've misrepresented let's just say Black people in this case. We know that white people telling Black stories is fraught with landmines of things that now, and they don't always understand that it's harmful. Like you're actually doing
Right.
harm.
Right.
And like I teach a workshop on writing about journeys other than your own, and it's called First Do No Harm,
Huh.
because I think people have to understand, like, it's not like, oh, if you get this wrong, no big deal. Like
Right.
you're part of a tradition and a historical context of how harmful, how these wrong narratives hurt people. Wrong narratives justified enslavement.
Right.
Like stories literally matter that much. You cannot just get it wrong.
Right.
And so, but you have to have people at the table who are capable of doing that interrogation of themselves,
Right.
or if you don't have any Black people at the table who are going to do the interrogation of you. And so it's like putting, putting the something in charge of the hen house, the fox in charge of the hen
Right.
house,
Right. Right. Right.
you know?
Yeah. Ugh. Okay. back, we got off on a tangent, but I do,
Yeah.
we have to talk about this when we talk about the Office of Historical Corrections. I want to
Okay.
talk about writing people different than yourself. Okay. What are you reading right now?
Couple of things, like I'm multitasking.
Okay.
I can say this because Kirkus said it when they wrote about my book. I review books for Kirkus.
Okay.
So I'm reading a YA book right now and an adult book right now that I can't name.
Okay.
And also finishing The Prophets by Robert
Oh,
Jones.
okay. I have it.
Yeah.
I have to read it still. I'm like trying to cram in 2 more 2020 releases before the year ends, because one of my goals for 2021 is to focus almost exclusively on 2021 releases, because I just want to see what it's like to read ahead and like use my platform for good. I like,
you absolutely use your platform.
Right. But like, I feel like I have this platform and I'm like, great, but wouldn't it be nice if I could be like, this book is coming out, everyone keep your eyes out for it,
Okay,
like, especially in this time of COVID. Cause normally I
Yeah.
read like close to release date, but I think I want to read ahead. So that's my goal. Anyways, so The Prophets and Black Buck are the 2 books that are early 2021 releases that I'm hoping to get to as soon as the year changes over. Not that anybody asked, just telling you about my reading list.
No, I love it. I love it.
Okay.
I hadn't heard about Black Buck.
It's like, I think it's supposed to be like a satire, and it's sort of, it's from HMH. I don't know. It's supposed to be funny and good. And he likes this podcast, and his publicist told me that I was the podcast that he asked to be on, the only one he has to be on for his book tour. So I'm like super excited about that. So you'll probably hear him on the show soon.
Right.
But that was a really nice thing for someone to say.
Yes.
Okay. If you're not reviewing for Kirkus, how do you pick your next book? Do you like read about it like New York Times? You just rely on friends, Bookstagram? Like, what do you do?
Bookstagram, Twitter. I try and read, friends. Like my friend Brian Broom's book, Punch Me Up to the Gods, is coming out, memoir. So it's nonfiction. You're gonna love it.
Wait, I just put that on my reading list like yesterday.
But in this time of, the pandemic, one of the things we could do was buy books.
Right.
And, because we can be safely at home reading, but buying the books, we're supporting authors who can't physically get out and promote books. We're supporting indie bookstores. So buying books was just a great, it had just had all of these benefits.
Right.
And so I, just between Twitter and Bookstagram, that's where I've been finding out about books. And then, people now want to send me books. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So free books. But I still try and buy books, even books that get sent to me. Like I'll have multiple copies and just gift one to somebody. But that's usually where it is. Like there's somebody I know who has a book coming out. Because a lot of my friends are writers,
right.
and prose writers, poets. So, I'll have some poetry collections in the mix as well.
Okay. You mentioned gifting books. So what's a book that you like to recommend to people?
Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments. I gave that, or some people are getting that for Christmas from me. Also my friend Yona Harvey's second collection of poems, You Don't Have to Go to Mars for Love.
Okay.
Which I thought is a great title.
It's
and it's just a fantastic collection. So that's a common gift book. I was on this streak where I was giving the men in my life heavy
Hmm.
and survival math,
Oh yeah,
Mitchell S.
Mitchell
Jackson's book,
Jackson.
Survival Math. And then also Rion's book,
The world
uh,
may destroy you.
The World
No,
Doesn't Require
doesn't
You.
require you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great collection of short stories. So but heavy definitely. Like so
yeah.
many guys that I know got heavy from me, and
So
it's like
good.
therapy.
You mentioned buying books. So, what is the last
Yeah.
book you purchased, and from what bookstore?
Um, Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments,
Okay.
Sadia Hartman's book, from through bookshop.org. So it
Yeah.
was probably White Whale.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about other favorite indie booksellers, bookstores?
Oh, City Books in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
They are such a champion of authors and readers. And fun fact about City Books here in Pittsburgh, when the Ma Rainey's Black Bottom
Hmm.
production, they Levy, he reads, he's a reader, I think it's Levy, and they needed books from that looked old, and City Books is a used bookstore. And
Mm.
they went to City Books and said, we need some books for Levy or a book. And they ended up taking a stack from her. So when you see the movie, those books are from City Books in Pittsburgh, which is cool because August Wilson is from here. Yeah. Um, Pittsburgh has one Black-owned bookstore, which is Tiny Books.
Okay.
But also shout out to Harriet's
Of course.
Bookshop in Philly, Loyalty Bookstores, and Uncle
Mm.
Bobby's.
Yes, 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 yes. We love all those bookstores. We love all bookstores except for ones that are racist. What is the last really good book that someone recommended to you?
Finna by
Mm.
Nate Marshall.
Okay, poetry.
Yeah,
Are you big
yeah.
into poetry?
Well, I go back and forth. Like it's usually again someone I know,
Okay.
right? So my friend Yona, when her collection came out, I had to read that. My friend Kelly Stevens Kane poetry collection, Hallelujah Science, had to
Mm.
read that. Reginald Dwayne Betts, his collection Felon.
Mm-hmm. I have it. I
Um,
haven't read it yet. Is it
oh
so
yeah, you
good?
gotta read that.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Ah,
And then, probably on Twitter, I saw Nate's book and it was like, the title is Finna. Of course I got to
yeah,
read it. I
yeah,
didn't know anything else about it, but I was like, I'm going to, somebody was recommending it via Twitter. And then
right.
that's how I ended up finding out about it.
How do you organize your books?
Oh, it's a mess. So I have bookshelves in my bedroom. There's usually a stack of books in my living room. There are books on my nightstand. There's always at least one book in the bathroom. And then I have like a purse book. And then I have a car book.
Okay.
Well, I'm not in my car as much, but you got to have a purse book.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I live in LA, and so I don't really have a purse book because I feel like in
Mhm.
LA you're in the car. You're like never, but I guess I
Yeah.
do have a book. I also like to read one book at a time, mostly when I
Oh,
can.
yeah.
But I that's changed a lot since starting this
Yeah.
podcast. I used to be like, I'm a one book pony. I only read one book. And now I'm like reading 5 books right now. And I'm
Yeah,
like, I only read
exactly.
one book, but I'm actually reading a lot of books. So who knows? Okay. What else do I want to know about your reading life? So this is sort of like a little speed round. I'm going to just ask you and you tell me
Mhm.
just the first book that pops into your head for this answer. So the last book that made you laugh.
It was probably Nafisa's book, The
Okay.
Heads of the Colored People.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Last book that made you cry.
The Prophets.
Okay. Last book where you felt like you learned a lot.
Untrue.
Okay.
Untrue. Yeah.
Okay. A book that brings you joy.
My book.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Are there any books that you feel proud to have read?
Yeah, sort of going back. There's a book called Oreo by Fran Ross,
Mm-hmm.
and it is the first satirical novel by a Black woman. It was written in 1974, and talk about tackling, race and sex and
Right.
class and sexuality. She really does it. And it's so smart and funny. And even though it's set in the 70s, there's just certain things like the humor is still timeless. Um, and then she died young, without having finished the second book because she had to work. She had to
Mm.
freelance like a lot of us, and her
Mm-hmm.
story is so common for Black women writers. And so I think it was Harriet Mullen sort of had a revival of this book the same way Alice Walker did for Zora Neale Hurston's work. Um, and so Matt Johnson was, kind of telling, I was in a class with Matt for Hurston Writes Writers Week, and he was like, everybody should read Oreo. Um, and so that was in 2007. And I just got another copy because I lent my copy to somebody and didn't get it back. And so it's one that I just am so inspired by, just the story, not the technical story, but her story, the author's story,
Right. Right.
and that how trailblazing she was.
I love that. Do you have a problematic favorite book?
Yeah, I mean, depending on, whose definition of problematic, but um I was way too young, but I was like in elementary school and I read The Happy Hooker.
I don't know that.
And you don't know? Okay. So 70s, might even been six. I mean, I was born in the 70s, but I don't know. This book came out in the 60s or 70s. And it was scandalous because it was a woman who wrote joyfully about being a hooker.
Oh,
And
I
my
love
next door
this.
neighbor who was babysitting me had a bookshelf. And so I would just get books off the shelf, and nobody ever said I couldn't read these books. And I was a precocious reader. So if I didn't know what those words meant, I went right to the dictionary and I was scandalized. And so I don't recommend it. And I certainly would not want my kids to read the Happy Hooker in elementary school. But yeah, my mind was blown.
Oh my God, I love that so much. Okay, I'm going to just give you two more and then we have to
Okay.
stop because we have to talk about Danielle's book. But here's your
Okay.
two more. What is a book, speaking of young Deesha, what is a book that you think should be, that if you were a teacher, you would assign in
Mhm.
high school?
I would assign heavy in high school
Okay.
just to help Black boys see the full range of human expression, that
Mm-hmm.
they're allowed to access all of that, and the tenderness in that book.
Yeah.
Um and then I would also recommend Daddy Was Number Runner, which is
Okay.
my favorite YA book. Well, I mean, I think all genders should read heavy, and all genders should read Daddy Was a Number Runner. Set in 1930s Harlem, it's a coming of age story, and even though it was the 1930s, that was the first book I saw myself in as a
Hmm.
Black child. um and so I just, I think a lot of times when we have Black books for students to read, and certainly Toni Morrison, great, and James Baldwin, but I don't know that um, Black students are reading enough Black
Right.
YA.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like my kids, I know read like Fences and
Right.
certain other books, but those would be two.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, this is really exciting for me. I just realized you are the
Okay.
last person who will get to answer this question for this particular person. So just here we go.
Okay. All
I
right.
steal this one from the New York Times by the book. If you could require the current president of the United States to read one book, what would it be? And you will be the last person on this podcast to recommend a book for
Ooh.
45 because this comes out the first week of January, and then February, we have a new president.
Yes. Yes. Okay. I want to get the full title. It's called Why Didn't We Riot? A Black Man in Trump Land by Isaac
Mm,
Bailey.
okay.
And he's a Black man in white spaces, and he talks about race and kind of breaks down what it's been like,
Hmm.
living under Trump, but he also puts it in historical context,
Okay.
right? And he talks a lot about the criminal justice system and mass incarceration, and just putting the Trump presidency in good context. And so it's a book about Trump, but not just about Trump.
Ugh, I love it.
And it would force him. I mean, can he read? I don't even know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
We have to just, that is a little
but
suspend
it tells
disbelief.
him about himself. Yeah.
I love it. Okay. You're amazing. Everyone, this is Deesha Philyaw. She is going to be back the last week of January when we discuss the Office of Historical Corrections. If you haven't yet, please pick up a copy of The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. Deesha, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And everyone else, we will see you in the stacks. That does it for us. Thank you all so much for listening, and thank you to Deesha for being our guest. Deesha will be back on January 27th for the Stacks Book Club discussion of The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans. Please subscribe to the Stacks wherever you get your podcasts, and if you're listening through Apple Podcasts, be sure to leave us a rating and a review. For more from the Stacks, please follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram and at The Stacks Pod _ on Twitter, and check out the website, thestackspodcast.com. Sebastian Alcala is our sound editor and producer. Our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tigirigis. The Stacks is created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.